Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Talks 4.0. We have Abhishek Gupta here, who is the founder and CEO of Grey Kernel, a leading XR training and simulation company. He's also been recognized as 35 under 35 by Entrepreneur magazine, along with successful entrepreneurs like Ritesh Agarwal, Ankiti Bose, and many more. So, thank you so much, Abhishek, for agreeing to this podcast.
Thanks, Rishi. Great to be here, and it's always a good opportunity to speak to the fellow entrepreneurs or fellow colleagues from the ecosystem. I love, chitting chatting about the XR. So let's, make it a great conversation over the next couple of minutes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start with telling your story behind starting Grey Kernel. How did the idea came into your mind, and what was the journey like?
Okay, so I honestly do not belong to the ecosystem where I am. In fact, in the beginning of the things, the entire credit goes to my co-founder Pranchal. So I had my initial sort of stint in the technology side of investment banking and capital markets. So I was working with a couple of leading investment banks and had some of the international stint as well. And thereafter, during one of those transitions, I had an opportunity to work with a gaming company in India. So we started uh, an offshore. I was a part of an offshore delivery set up for a German gaming conglomerate. So being the first recruit there, so we actually set the entire ops and stuff like that, the delivery pipeline. That's where I met Pranchal. Pranchal had his entire, by that time, entire career built in the gaming ecosystem only. So I had the thing for gaming and entrepreneurship and technology, but after meeting Pranchal, I was exposed to the dev side of the entire gaming ecosystem. So in 2012, 2013, I guess that's where we started talking about virtual reality as a thing. At that point of a time, we all know that VR ecosystem was nowhere. We just had DKs, the dev kits of Oculus to play around. So we tried our hands as first gen developers to do couple of prototypes, and we in India we didn't even had a device at that point of a time. There was no marketplace, there were no platform to post stuff. So we did couple of prototypes. We posted it on platforms like VVR. I still remember that name. VVR was one of the platforms, and Road to VR was one of the very first portal that started publishing about those experiences. So people appreciated what we were trying to build, just as freelancing prototypes or free prototypes, sorry. And kind of got us into the confidence that we can actually build something from the creativity as well as technology stability standpoint. So in the same timeline, we started thinking about formally setting up a business in India, a company that would do specifically build stuff into VR AR ecosystem. Now the important part which was missing by that point of a time, that we were we established ourselves on a good note with the technology, but we still did not know exactly what domain to start building a product. What domain would that be where we would start building a product. And because it was a nascent stage, globally the companies were also establishing themselves more from the technology standpoint rather than the domain or use case standpoint. So it took us a couple of years, and then probably we arrived somewhere. So I guess I'll do that storytelling later on during this conversation. How it did go.
Absolutely. That's really interesting, and I think your journey must have a lots of ups and downs because you have been in this space since the very beginning, especially when we look at India's ecosystem, right? And what basically, so I'm very sure when you started, the kind of vision that you had would not be as clear as it is today, right? So today, what is the vision that you have for Grey Kernel? What is it? What is the impact that you are trying to create through this startup?
Okay, so like you rightly initiated this question from the point, like I mean, at the starting point, we didn't have this kind of a vision where we are, landing today, or maybe we'll arrive in next couple of years. At the very beginning, we just wanted to utilize this technology for some good. We were struggling to figure out a use case, and during that life cycle, we worked with a lot of industries. We worked with a lot of corporates in India. One of the toughest things to have been cracked at that point of a time, to actually finding some budgets into a large corporate and selling them the idea that we'll do something meaningful for you with the technology that we are champion about, you know. So
Hmm.
say reaching out to one of the investment bank, because that has been my forte, before starting into the gaming or VR industry. So I reached out to a couple of investment banks, pitched them the idea, give me some of your R&D budgets or the innovation budgets, we'll do something meaningful for you. Reaching out to an automobile company, reaching out to a real estate company. So the idea was, to do as many pilots, as many research or innovation projects on those little budgets, where during that execution cycle we might be able to make up what works best. Because one thing that we clearly understood by that point of time in early 2015-16 only, we clearly established that one of the most intensive experiences which are happening by that point of time were into marketing agencies, gimmick wala, right? You would go into a mall or a multiplex, you would see some of the people offering you playing games like getting a roller coaster ride, or maybe jumping off the clicks and things like that. We clearly figured out that it is going to be uh, able to help you make money faster, but there is very little or no amount of retention. People are not going to come over and over again and do the same stuff, play the same game. So somewhere or the other we'll have to figure out one use case where we are able to deliver the utility in the technology that we are champions about. So that's where we followed that cycle with multiple businesses. And by the end of 2016, kind of we figured out that training, learning, and simulation, these are a couple of things that we believe is going to put the best out of these technologies specifically. And secondly, one other thing that we always believe, me and Pranchal, we share this common thing, like we believe the paradigm shift, the HCI, the human computer interface or man machine interface, we are about to see a paradigm shift. We always knew that it is not going to happen in next 1 or 2 year, but in the next decade, specifically the decade that we are in, as soon as we approach the end of it, we would see a massive change in the way we are interacting with machines. And obviously we won't have the same kind of screens, we won't have the same kind of input devices, the controls and stuff like that. So that's where our point of excitement started coming in. So training, simulation, learning to deliver the value, and then different kind of interfaces to interact with machine. This is where our vision actually aligns with what we are trying to build at Grey Kernel.
Got it, got it. So I think that's a pretty interesting point that you brought up, human computer interface. Recently, I'm sure you must have also checked out Elon Musk's latest video on the monkey.
Neuralink.
So, Neuralinks, yes.
Yep.
So, what do you think about the future of HCI? Because essentially, putting a chip inside your brain is a very dangerous uh, process, right? Although they have been developing that highly sophisticated automated technology, but would humans be okay with putting something inside the brain?
uh, that's a very controversial topic to touch around, but I am a firm believer in these kind of innovations, right? It might not be the right form factor. Imagine, let's take the same example and try to retrofit in the motion in the VR ecosystem. Like a couple of years ago, do we have the same set of VR or XR devices? The form factor was very different, and we all know that we are not going to carry those 2.5 kg or 3 kgs kind of headset, and we would not be able to move along and have them a part of our life. But let's look at the conversation that we are having today, the kind of innovation that is getting into the system today. We are talking about retina driven projections, we are talking about lighter devices, we are talking about pocket GPUs or mobile GPUs versus the tether system that we used to be having just like 3 4 5 years ago. So
Hmm.
from the start point, I guess I am okay that we are doing that Elon Musk is trying to do right now, the Neuralink is trying to achieve right now. It at least paves a path to the direction that we can get into. The form factor, the way it fits into the human, the way interfaces could always see various kind of shapes or fitment as soon as it goes toward the maturity. It is not the democratization state right now, let us agree. There is a phase, the way innovation goes into the world. Right now we are into just the exploration stage. We just want to explore what all things that we can do with that technology. Once the exploration phase is over, we want to retrofit into the commercial cycles, then the democratization comes in. The exact form factor for any of such devices, for any of such technologies, would always be seen perfect when you go into the phase of democratization. So probably we'll have to wait a couple of more years to get that going.
Absolutely. I think that's a very well thought through answer. Similarly, since you are talking about the nascent stage of this technology, I think you have always definitely been like the forefront when AR VR was in its nascent stage, right? So when you began your journey, can you tell us like what were the initial hurdles that you faced, and what are the hurdles that you are still facing?
Okay, so two of the prominent challenges that I would say me or Pranchal in both our journeys at Greycurrent would have seen is there's no stack or overflow. Like 5 years ago, there was no Stack Overflow for you to just reach out to internet and figure out the solution of a problem. You just see how people have solved this kind of a problem and you implement the same stuff. If you are stuck somewhere, you would have to spend your days and nights, blood and sweat into it, and then get out of it all by yourself. So technical support was one of the first thing that we've seen as a big challenge in that day. Second is the sales cycle as well. So back in the day, when I did my first sales pitch, so I was taking care, as of date, I'm the only sales guy in the company. So when I used to be reaching out to a customer, it was all about the storytelling, because my first pitch to a customer, I didn't have any sort of product, I didn't have a ready demo, I didn't have even a device. I just wanted to reach out to a customer, convince him to give me some budget so that I can buy a development kit and then try building something on top of it. So conventionally, the sales cycle goes into the planning, lead generation. You have your demos, your kits, and stuff like that. You send someone a ready link, and then your sales conversation eventually reaches out to a maturity. So achieving that kind of a sales was very much, person dependent. How well you can convince someone to buy into your story. It was all about the storytelling. I guess that was one of the first hurdles. On top of it, there was one more thing which was I was slightly not happy about, is that uh, VR or AR. So 2015, 16, 17, these were like 3 years where every company wanted to do VR or AR in some form. They figured out it's the new jazz, it's a new medium to attract footfall, it's a new medium to attract new eyeballs. So a lot of companies wanted to do VR, AR, or one of the other sort of engagements. And obviously it was good opportunity for all of us to be in business, make some quick bucks. But one of the other challenges that I faced, a lot of missell also happened at that point of time, which kind of took away the reputation of the medium. So trust me, there is no average kind of VR. Either there's great VR experience, or you'll feel pathetic about it. This is how
Hmm.
the customer journey or customer experience would happen. Either you'd be absolutely amazed or convinced by what you are getting into as an immersion, or you'd be absolutely disgusted by what I've seen, why I've spent so much money into it. There's nothing for me out there. So a lot of missell also happened. A lot of us promised moon to our customers, which kind of took away the realism in the expectations that people were having out of this VR, AR. I was always on the other side of the spectrum, where I used to be, putting very realistic expectations. Like, I am sure that I can promise you moon once we enter into the next decade. The form factor changes, the resolution improves, the computation, the GPU, becomes very portable. But today, this is what we can offer you. This is what we can realistically achieve. That was another hurdle, because a lot of other businesses, a lot of other people into the ecosystem were selling anything to the customer. And then it always came back to the serious businesses like us, who have been into the thing for good period of time, who even wanted to be into it for long term. So it was always like, they said, we bought this last time यार, किसी ने हमें VR में बोला था, और उसके बाद तो कुछ भी नहीं हुआ. मतलब it's just that it was all fad, it was all gimmick. So
Hmm.
one of the key hurdles was to take away that gimmickry from the use case. We had to be always, and we always like to be value centric. Whatever we are committing, the customer should be able to drive some value out of it rather than just taking it as, another form of selling gimmicks. So I guess these are two or three things that I felt, always, struggling with in last couple of years.
That's, I think, a really great insight for people who have, who are getting into this space, especially like now the technology is still evolving and the form factor is still reducing. And as you said, like the technology is still not at that democratization phase right now, but maybe in a couple of years we'll get there, right? So for like new generation entrepreneurs, people who want to probably get into this space, or maybe students who want to build a career in this space, what advice would you give to people who want to become an entrepreneur?
Specifically with the similar tech stack,
Yeah.
are we focused on the tech stack? Okay.
Yes.
So if anyone wants to set up a XR company today, I would highly recommend to start looking into one of the use cases, because as a generalist, I don't think so there is enough of meat for all of us to survive. And it's more to do because we're still like 5-6 years away from the democratization phase. And so not every single company would want, servicing opportunities, staff augmentation in VR or AR or XR kind of ecosystem. So the only way we can, build our specializations today for any of the starting or budding entrepreneur is to pick up a use case, try to deliver value, and I see a lot of companies doing the similar, following the similar model in Valley area. They're carving out their name in a particular domain and building themselves as a specialist or of one particular, use case. However, in India, most of us are struggling to clearly carve out a use case or tag along with any of the domain, because we are not finding a lot of opportunity. But yes, this is the time that we should start looking into seriously. I'm very sure that a lot of new hardware would hit the market in the next 2.5-3 years. So this is the sweet time for us to start building our brand, to start building our name, and clearly cut across a specialization, because it gets you clear branding versus,
Hmm.
struggling with everything. If you want to, achieve a branding in the short span of time, I guess the best way is to tag yourself with a domain so that it reaches out to the right set of users. You are identified as a recognized player in at least that particular industry or that domain. So I guess that'll be my most important focus or, advice to the entrepreneurs right now, starting in this domain particularly.
Awesome, awesome. So if since we are talking about the specific domains, and as you have already ventured into training and simulation, what what problems are you facing in terms of for like mass adoption of this technology for training and simulation?
uh, like I said, I am a firm believer in XR, and I have very strong beliefs, and it goes by the vision that we have been carrying, obviously. But one of the biggest challenges is the democratization of the hardware. Like we have all seen, it has eased up, in comparison to last 4-5 years, but we are still not there yet. Imagine, 5 years ago, when I used to be going to an enterprise asking them, why don't you get some of the training modules or the learning modules done through us for your employees, for your workforce, or for the students in the institution. There was one question always out there, how about, the hardware? How do we get that, tethered stuff put across? Because that requires immense amount of, capital investment, that requires decent amount of real estate as well to put across those kind of devices and assemblies. uh, since last 5 years, it has changed a lot dramatically. The devices like Oculus Go, Vive Focus, and stuff like that, the untethered devices, in fact, the Quest is making it a go, but still the input cost is still high.
Hmm.
For geographies like India, maybe Asia Pacific, we need anything to hit to the market, specifically reaching out to the democratization stage, unless it start fitting into the middleman's or the average man's pocket, which is like the price point of 100 and $150. 100 and
Okay.
$150, something that I personally consider as a sweet price point where, you can start reaching out to or hitting out to the masses.
Hmm.
So I guess that is still one of the biggest challenge for which the change is certainly going to happen over next couple of years. The way Oculus Quest, then Quest 2 has hit to the market, maybe the price point is not correct for the Indian or the Asian markets, but still the value is still being delivered. From the value delivery standpoint, we are better than yesterday or day before. So that is going to solve very soon, because we have no dearth of customers available in India who still believe that we can do wonders with this technology. But end of the day, you would need hardware to take this
Correct.
technology and propagate to the right set of consumers.
Correct. Correct. I think that makes total sense. So now let's talk about your passion for gaming. So we would like people to know that you are an avid gamer and you have been into gaming since many years, right? And as we all know, today's young generation between the age of say 14 to 18 are also really into this gaming scene, right? And even I personally interacted with them, and I learned that most of them don't like to study at all, and they want to become gamers in the future, right? That is the kind of career path that they are dreaming of. So what's your take on gaming as a career option? Like, what are the ways that actually make sense for the people? Because back in the days when we were young, we used to also think of becoming a cricketer, right? So that's similar in these children's cases, but they are into more of a digital gaming platforms, right?
Yes, yes.
So what do you think of gaming as a career option, and can you share some of your thoughts on those lines?
Absolutely, and just to add to beyond having my passion into gaming, last year I also set up a community, an esports community by the name of Ironborn Esports, where we were having active rosters for games like Counter Strike, PUBG, and then Valorant as well. So I get to interact luckily with a lot of young guys, young guns who want to build their career into gaming or who want to get into the esports side of thing. So uh, the things have changed in last 3.5 4 years, and I guess all credit goes to PUBG. Once again, the key, the pivot to this entire conversation is the fact of democratization.
Hmm.
I've been gaming for good long number of years, and I've had friends who have been playing Dota. We have started from Age of Empires. We have played various genres like FPS, RPG, MMOs, and all, right? But somewhere or the other, let us admit, we were all privileged to have that kind of computation devices available to us.
True.
But when you actually start looking at the masses, not everyone would have the kind of computation power in their workstations, the RAMs, the boards, and fanciest of the things, which you really need to pull off a decent game and give you a decent FPS. So PUBG changed this a lot. That was more or less the first time that people got access to a genre, a serious genre. Battle Royale came out as a decent genre, and people were hooked up to it as a great way of engagement. And it was served to people on a mobility kind of a device, and it started fitting into the average human's pocket. The average household's income slabs. So that's where I always pivot around the conversation of democratization. And it was kind of should be definitely credited for bringing in gaming to the largest masses in India. No matter what happened in the end, the game was banned or maybe promised to be released or not promised to be released, but somewhere or the other I would like to put my credentials, put my sincere thanks to PUBG. And that kind of created the influencers ecosystem in the gaming world as well. You would
Hmm.
people were not exposed in India. Only the serious gamer were knowing, or couple of hobbies were knowing about what happens on Twitch, how do you monetize, how do you make career into streaming, how do you make your career into gaming, esports, and stuff like that. I guess with PUBG, YouTube kind of cashed in on the opportunity, and it became the de facto choice, de facto Twitch kind of a competitor in India. And a new generation of influencers, a new generation of esports organization, a new generation of uh, esports athletes started budding up in India. It continued for about 2.5 year, and I guess right at the point when it was on the peak, the game was banned. But
Yeah.
somewhere or the other, it's still left on the positive note, because once the PUBG was banned, a lot of influencers switched on to the PC games like Valorant. They started playing various other genres as well. and kind of spread the awareness to the rest of the world in India that, there are other ways that you can make money at a very young age. You can, get yourself on a streaming platform. You can do hundreds of the stuff to make yourself financially independent. So that ways, I guess, the youngster today are pretty much exposed way better than what we were, or how we were, in our times, in our school or college kind of a, era. And my 2 cents currently to the budding gamers would be to obviously pick one of the games and build your skill set, because I've been a fan of, esports. And I always see, how in North America or European region, you get to see those, tie holds of Counter Strike. You get to see all the fancy giggles happening around the Dota 2 and stuff like that. So I would certainly be, rooting for the same stuff to happen with any of the games, at least in India. And I guess luckily the way economy is growing, or moving on the brighter side, more and more people are, now coming towards buying into the gaming PCs, and they are not just limited to their gaming's experiences with the mobile as a medium. They're more, playing into the PC games as well. So I guess that's a
Right.
brighter side for all of us. And let's be positive about it. Let's see, we get to see our own champions, getting onto the global stage of, competitions like League of Legends, Counter Strike, and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I totally agree with the fact that esports is definitely one of the next big thing, and it's already a big thing in the West, and India is now getting a taste of it thanks to PUBG, as you said, right? The one question that I have for you on the same lines is, yes, esports as a industry is growing. There are brighter sides to it, as you just mentioned, but what about the economical impact that it will have with respect to the competition? Because right now, I would say, let's say 8 out of 10 students are thinking that they can become the best gamers,
Hmm, hmm.
right? And each or every one of them is, really passionate. They are buying like laptops and, gaming consoles, and giving their all in to gaming. Okay.
Mhm.
But then when you talk about esports, there are only like few champions out of this entire mass market that is going to be able to make it to that. So what happens to the rest of
Okay,
the people
okay,
then?
okay. My answer is, let's take our examples from the sport cricket.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of thousands and millions of us who have dreamt of, playing cricket at a level. When we started our early ages, we all used to be going to parks, bunk schools and do things like that, stupid things, and then played cricket. Obviously you would have also, dreamt of being the Tendulkar, or Srinath, if we are from that generation, maybe Zahir Khan. So uh, what did it do to you? At the end of the day, some of us went ahead and, did things in a better way, while the rest of us had the maturity. The people who were not able to make it, we did something else. But did it, get us somewhere to get our first feeling of competitiveness, which is very important in our rooting years?
Hmm.
I feel the same for the gamers as well. In fact, if you take example of cricket, just because we have good number of bench strength, good amount of bench strength, we have good amount of budding cricketers, you would have started seeing that, initially nobody used to be talking about Ranji.
Hmm.
It was just meant for, meant something to be discussed within the players, within those niche circles only. But today we have started talking about Ranji. We started talking
Hmm.
about Mushtaq Ali Trophy. Today we have started talking about Vijay Hazare's Trophy, right? All
Hmm.
because, we have started rooting for the next level of talent as well. So there is a larger spectrum that has opened up for, the young talent. The same
Hmm.
goes with the esports as well. This is the new entry, this is just the beginning of it. And we just know handful number of players who have made it big in their life. Probably we know a couple of streamers who have made it big, like Model, Dynamo, Scout, and same set of people. However, I know if you start following the regional YouTube channel, do you know that there are regional YouTube channel where couple of people, couple of streamers or esports athletes have built in their brand just because they are streaming in Telugu?
Okay.
Someone has built in the brand a million subscriber channel just because the person is streaming in Tamil.
Hmm.
So the regional influences have already started kicking in. Now
Hmm.
imagine the way it goes. As the same way we have 18, 20, 25 spoken languages in India, you would have started seeing the local channel local channels, local vernacular driven content. And at the
Yeah.
same time you would see more of the more leagues happening. When I do remember in 2018 and 19, we used to be just having for PUBG, we used to be just having 2 or 3 competitions, which were organized by Tencent only. If you see today, I guess there are more than 20, 25, 30, you know, championships, different kind of tournaments that have been organized by, good amount of, decent or, established firms. And the prize
Hmm.
pool from that day till today has gone, I guess at least 20, 25, 30x. So the opportunity, this is a very nascent stage where we are,
Hmm.
and I feel personally more and more people that we see committing towards the gaming, at least in the beginning, start taking things seriously. It is going to contribute to the overall growth of the ecosystem in terms of the way transactions are happening in the sale and purchase of the the in-game purchases, in terms of the hardware which is being sold into the ecosystem. So it's a positive sign, and I'm sure most of us who are playing it, I played a lot of games in the college days, that didn't break my heart. Once I couldn't make it into one of the bigger leagues, it did not leave me nowhere. I figured out that this is not something which is working for me commercially. I should move on to something else. So I guess that be taken care of automatically.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Talking about games, I recall this one Black Mirror episode where the person is just attaching like a device to his head, and then he enters into the game as a character. What do you think about that idea? Because you are already in the at the forefront of technology, and you also know the gaming scene.
Okay, so to be very honest, in 2015, that was a part of one of my pitch to an investor.
Okay.
Okay,
Wow.
but it did sound like a far-flung idea. We believe, like, as I've been saying, I've been very honest about the timeline on which the things would be accomplished. The vision would start coming true. So I, at that point of time, in one of the pitches, I spoke to an investor based out of Valley, and I talked about this idea, and the timeline which I exactly put across were anywhere by the end of 2027, 2028. That by the end of this
Hmm.
decade we would certainly see something of this sort. And I'm still very bullish about it. It's not going to be a distant dream anymore. We would see that day for sure.
Hmm.
And more to
Wow.
that, and more to that, to be very honest.
Wow. I mean, that's just like mind blowing where it is heading, because we are currently at the immersion level with VR and AR, and maybe if you are going beyond that, I'm sure like human computer interface would be a key part in this kind of a gaming platform that we are just talking about, right?
So from the technology standpoint, I guess there are 2 or 3 problems which are waiting to be solved.
Okay.
The portability of the GPUs, the efficiency of the GPU, and then the resolution. Once
Hmm.
the 3 things are solved, with the form factor, obviously, I guess the world would see very fast iterations. The amount of iterations that we are doing on a yearly or a 2-year basis right now with the XR ecosystem. From the HCI standpoint, it would be a lot faster once we innovate, sufficiently on these 3 terms, and which is, I'm sure, is going to happen by 2024, 25. And then you'll see, we would see every 6 months we would see a different loop iterating in front of us. And then you would start seeing more fitment, then you would start seeing the wave of the democratization, plenty of other use cases picking up, because then we'll have a ready hardware, a ready medium to serve the content to the people.
Wow. I mean, I get it. Like, because the technology has evolved to a certain extent, the future evolution that is going to happen very, very, very fast. And I
Absolutely.
think that will also bring up a lot of personal challenges for people with respect to adaptability, right? Um,
Yes.
so because like the technological evolution is accelerating at a tremendous pace, uh, what do you think people like? What skills do you think people need to really focus on in today's time to be able to cope up with this faster evolution that's happening? Because this evolution is changing, impacting like multiple aspects of our lives, right? It's not just gaming, but evolution of XR as a whole is going to touch a lot of dimensions of our life. So what like core skills or core things that people like the young workforce need to focus on today?
I always believe that a very specific side of the technology evolution, that humans are made for exploration, not to do the monotonous, right? So automation, machine learning, all these things would eventually play up a role, that you would get rid of doing the repetitions and the stuff that you do, and humans would have a larger plate in the exploration to figure out what lies beyond the universe, what lies beyond that path, and to keep on delivering the next set of stuff. So I guess one of the very first thing that I want the young people to start looking into is the spatial thinking, or spatial thinking, however we pronounce it, to start thinking in 3D, three dimension.
Hmm.
And because that really opens up, I see a lot of youngsters these days, a couple of our colleagues as well, they have they've been coming from various engineering courses. Some of them are mechanical engineers, some of them are computer science or IT engineers or electronics engineers per se. So one of the very first thing that I personally see in their growth cycle is to start thinking in 3D, to start imagining any problem by unfolding it,
Hmm.
pick up a space, unfold it, and then start imagining how to basically approach this as a problem. So 3D thinking, the spatial thinking, is one of the very first thing that we start picking up. No matter however you are enabling it, you're enabling it by learning a game engine like Unity or Unreal. You might be enabling it by learning a design tool like CAD, or AutoCAD, or Inventor
Hmm.
Pro, anything of that sort. I guess that's one of the very first skill that I personally advocate that the institutions to start should start taking up seriously.
Hmm.
We all have been to engineering or design institutions, and uh, that was the least focused area that we have spent our times with. But I feel it is the
Absolutely.
need of the hour to start exploring our younger generation, exposing our younger generation to these kind of tools, so which gets them the first kind of a food for thought. And then on top of it, I guess I would uh, expect people to start building applications at the very early stage.
Hmm.
I guess there's no dearth of learning content today. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there were real scarcity of the content, how to learn a particular tool. I guess today, Udemy, Udacity, you go to, if you want to learn Unity, Unity does have their own learning content. So there is plenty of content available in the market, available on internet, free of cost, maybe at a very, very lean premium. You could just go through and start learning. So learn yourself to start thinking, get yourself to start thinking to the ready, build your one or two or three applications, maybe a game or anything of that sort. Then it gets you to the right set of platform, which will give you an opportunity to go in any of the direction. You can go into learning machine learning. You can get and going further into the automation or anywhere, maybe getting into the gaming or VR, AR, XR. But I guess the first point has to be starting into the 3D.
Hmm. I think that's really crucial today, because if our reality is going to transform from like 2D to 3D, then we will like once we get to that mass adoption phase, we will need a lot of like developers who will develop like various experiences, because all the things that we
Rishi,
yeah.
yes, just Rishi, just to put a very strong point, you just hit the right note. You specifically mentioned that the future is all about seeing, transitioning from 2D to 3D. The
Hmm.
stuff that I keep talking about, the paradigm shift into the SCI or man machine interface. 10 years down the line, you would have variables all around you,
Hmm.
and you'd be able to see every interface adjusted into the world around you.
Hmm.
integrated with the immersion around you. So in that case, you would have to obviously start seeing anything from the 3D standpoint, rather than the current interface of looking into 2D screens over your laptops, your mobile devices, and stuff like that. So this is the reason why I always advocate that we should, it is the right time that the world should start, seeing things from the 3D standpoint and start adjusting to the, to the shift that is going to coming to us for sure very soon.
Absolutely. And I think even though there will be a lot of critics for this technology, but the change is like bound to happen. There is no way, like, there's no way this is not coming, because all the giants have started putting their money in, and that really defines that this is the next big shift that's going to happen in human life. So I think
Absolutely, without doubt.
on the closing note, if you would like to share anything else to our audience.
Just that, thank you once again for this conversation, for this chit chat, and it's always a great, pleasure to speak to the people from the ecosystem. And I guess my 2 cents or my piece of advice to everyone, in fact, as a request as well, keep your hopes high with what is going to happen. Keep your beliefs in, and do not give hope on XR lagging somewhere, or VR or AR as a medium lagging somewhere. It is just that, it'll arrive in the right form factor. It'll arrive in the right sort of mix, the way it deem fit to the rest of the world. And the moment it arrives, it is going to certainly change the way we interact with the computers, we interact with the machines. And once again, be positive about what's happening in the HCI. Be watchful about what's happening in the MMI. And that's how I would, like to extend my thanks once again.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, for spending time with us, and sharing your insights into a lot of different variety of topics. I'm very sure that everyone who is watching the video would have got a lot of value out of this.